Hey folks, so this is a screencast covering the story structure lecture and what we call a link farm. This is going to take you through Robert McKee's story structure and some of the basics of story structure for film and screenwriting. This is obviously just scratching the very surface of this subject, but it's going to create a valuable set of vocabulary words that we can touch with, glossary terms that we can use throughout our coming discussions, and hopefully throw some concepts at you that I think are going to gel with your understanding of film narrative. And there's a lot more to learn here, and I really recommend you digging into it. It opens up a lot when you think about film and you're talking about not just how you view film, how you might criticize film, but also if you're interested in how you write film, how you act in films, because driving the narrative of a film is something that is very important for actors. When they're in scenes, they need to know what really is trying to be accomplished in that scene so they know how to make choices that support what the director is trying to accomplish. So I'm not going to just go, I could go on and on and on. I'm going to try very hard not to. Uh, the work that you're looking at is based on the writing and teaching of Robert McKee, who is a real iconoclast screenwriting teacher. He does these lectures, at least he used to, I'm not sure if he does them anymore, all over the country. Studios, uh, Netflix, Showtime, HBO, all these places would send their execs, writers, and people to these seminars. People that were just interested in screenwriting, people like me would take them, and you would sit there for 3 days. I mean, it would be like 12 hours a day, if you can believe such a thing. The man could just talk and lecture and show you slides and give you cuts and examples from films, and it was a really intense situation, and sometimes a little ridiculously so. Um, but you learned a lot about screenwriting. His book Story is the book on narrative structure. He's done a couple of follow-up books, but Story is really the sort of biblical text of narrative structure in the movie business. So if you're looking at the course, we're here in week number 2, and you'll see a new button here for this, which is Story Structure 2 Lecture and Link Farm. I've included this video, which is from the movie adaptation, which is seen with Nicolas Cage and Robert McKee, who is in the movie, playing himself, and Nicolas Cage is playing a screenwriter, and they have this exchange, and it's pretty over the top, but it's actually having it's over the top in the sense that the real Robert McKee, who I've later had drinks with after the seminar, doesn't take himself that seriously, but in the lecture he certainly does take himself that seriously. So yeah, in this movie with Nicolas Cage, it's kind of a funny watch, and it gives you a sense of how important sometimes people take this stuff, because there's a lot riding on the production of any film, a lot of money involved, and there's a kind of weird hocus pocus magic to it, and people are trying to figure it out. Many of us included. So good stories don't follow rules, but good storytellers know the rules and they know when to follow them. That's a pretty famous McKee quote, and I would say is one that is very accurate. If you're going to break a rule in screenwriting, you should know what rule you're breaking, so that you know what the audience's expectation is of what might happen in this moment and how you can set that expectation on its head. Again, this entire document on up in the module, and it is required reading, as are all of the links. I mean, you don't have to watch the whole adaptation quote link if you don't want to watch that one. So there is a SlideShare, what would you call show here, which goes through the elements of story by Robert McKee in 65 slides. It is outstanding. I hope it sticks around. It's very stripped down and very basic, but it really absolutely encompasses every single thing. Unfortunately, I think there are like a couple of truck ads in the middle of it. Anyway, worth watching and taking a look at to understand these terms and elements. Inciting incident is the first major event in the telling of the story. It's a primary cause of everything that follows in the story. It can be argued what the inciting incident is in a given story. It is the inciting incident of Titanic when he wins the cards and he wins the tickets to get on the Titanic? Is it the moment that he meets Rose and they first see each other and begin to fall in love? It depends on what you think the arch plot of the story is. In fact, there's an inciting incident for every plot, whether it's an arch plot or a subplot in a movie, or in a story. What is the inciting incident in Casablanca? Is it when she comes back and he first sees her, when Rick first sees her again? It's certainly the inciting incident for their love line, but is that the arch plot of Casablanca? I think it probably is, and Casablanca is a little different in the sense that there's a lot that goes on in the movie before Ilsa comes back. We're talking about 45 minutes worth of movie. So it's a very unusual movie in that sense. I want you to dig deeper into this. This website goes into great detail about what inciting incident is, and it also begins to talk about the next really important story element, which is quest. So an inciting incident radically changes the narrative of the protagonist, in the sense that one can never go back from the inciting incident. You can't unwin tickets to the Titanic. You either get on the Titanic or you don't get on it. But one way or the other, your life is never going to be the same. You either live the rest of your life knowing that you dodged that incredible bullet, or you experience the sinking of the Titanic, but your life is never the same after that moment. Okay? The quest is what happens to that protagonist after that inciting incident. All right, so you meet Rose on the deck of the Titanic. The quest becomes the fulfillment of the love story that you were destined to have with this person who is the woman of your dreams, if you're Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who, by the way, name I can't even remember. Anyway. Yeah, that is the quest in that, and I would say arguably that is the arch plot of Titanic, the love story. It's obviously not the arch plot for everybody else on the Titanic, but for the movie, I think it is a love story, and that is the arch plot. And one of the reasons that I say that is because if you really look at the movie, you see that necklace, she drops that off the boat at the very beginning, and that's the letting go of him and her connection, because obviously she's, I guess, off to the happy hunting ground or something, and she's going to forget all about him, having not given him room on the flotsam and allowed him to survive after the sinking of the Titanic, which I would always say in that movie, isn't there a little bit more room on that thing that you're floating on? Anyway, that's the love line, and that's the story. That's what we're watching, really, in Titanic. And then there's a boat that sinks and thousands of people that die. The quest is what is going to drive us through the narrative. We're going to see up and down revolutions of story values, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. But in a love story, it's very easy. They're getting closer to being together and in love forever. They're getting farther away. They're getting closer. They're getting farther away. Why is this important? Because every scene that in which those story values are at stake, the love line, if it's a love line of an arch plot, that has got to turn. You can't come into a scene where everything looks great and come out of the scene where everything looks great unless at some point it looked like it was going the other way, or else you don't really have a dramatic scene. And when I say dramatic scene, it could be a comedy too. In fact, when you look at comedies, and a terrific comedy to look at, if you're going to look at that, is The Wedding Crasher. You'll see that every single scene rotates very clearly as to whether they're getting closer, they're getting farther away. They're getting closer, they're getting farther away. Sometimes multiple times within a scene. Okay? And those rotations of story values are what we call progressive complication, rising action. And why rising action? Because they are getting more and more intense as the story goes along. Action movies are a perfect example. They might start off with tons of action. And you're like, whoa, Saving Private Ryan, which, by the way, excuse me, is an action movie. It's a war movie, and it's a history, but it's an action movie. Arguably has one of the most compelling action sequences in the history of cinema in the first 18 minutes, maybe 23 minutes of the movie, which is the beach scene, Omaha beach scene. But we don't know anybody. I mean, we kind of know, we kind of get the feeling that this is the guy that was in the graveyard, but we don't know him. Really, we don't know anything about him. We're not that connected to him, right? So what becomes rising action? If you have that as the first scene, what could possibly be more interesting than that, or more compelling, or more action-driven than that? Well, if it becomes life and death for someone we know, and someone we empathize with, and someone that has a quest that maybe involves something greater than himself, then the intensity level has risen. Now, maybe the action level hasn't, in the sense that there's not more people dying and more people blowing up and more bodies flying through the air. Maybe that level of intensity is not as much. Maybe it's just the intensity of like the one sniper up there and they're ducking behind it, and then Jackson finally gets him in that amazing shot that goes through the actual scope, which is in fact something that did happen, not in World War II. I believe it happened in Vietnam. And that's an intense moment, but that isn't what's important in that moment, in the sense that what's important in the moment is that now we know the people, now we know the quest, now we know them, and we empathize with them, and they mean something to us if they get blown up and end up flying through the air. Whereas, truth be known, at the beginning of the movie, we don't know any of these people, right? Maybe Tom Hanks' character a little. We get the graveyard scene, but even then, we really don't know who this dude is, and we don't know, other than the fact that he's on Omaha Beach, what the heck is going on with him. Okay. Climax is really when that person, that protagonist, can be male, female, it could be a dog, it could be it could be a fish, right? In a Pixar movie, gets to that moment where they are the closest to their quest, but if it's a well-written film, probably also seem like they are the furthest away. In some ways, they have gone through all this rising action and all this progressive complication, but actually they are at the negative of the negative, as Robert McKee would say, where they are as down and as far seeming from what as possible. And then we're going to see some kind of resolution, some sort of thing that happens in the climax, which in which they're going to lose it all or gain it all. And that's really what a good third act climax ends up being.